So we'll just get right into it and start discussing the original pool circulation issues that we were having. It's a little bit messy back here. Nicholas came in and created a little bit of a mess. We didn't get it too bad over here, but it's 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 a mess back here to say the least. So back to the original pool issues with the circulation we were having. They put the spillway in the spa here for the water to circulate. The basic idea is to get the flow going from the main drains, which there's two in the spa, and then there's one in the pool here in the deep end, and then that all ties in to a single line, and then the skimmer basket coming off of a secondary line into the motor, and then the returns come in to the spa a little bit more than what the returns for the pool come in, so that way the water spills over, and then you're getting more circulation coming out of the pool back into the pump to filter, and then fresh water coming out of the spa. The issue with this was the way that the plumbing was done didn't allow for this to happen without constantly having to move the check valve, or not the check valve, the Jandy valves back and forth to ensure proper circulation. Every time we wanted to run the Polaris, which is the vacuum over here, we were having issues with the spa circulating correctly and having enough water flow to the Polaris to function properly as well. So basically, with the flip of a valve, we could do one or the other, but not both simultaneously, which, yeah, it's messed up to say the least. Now, I don't like talking bad or down on people's work, craftsmanship, labor, anything like that. You never know what was going on. They might have been dealing with only having what, like, trying to make it work with what they had type scenario, or maybe they were out of their league, so to speak, with doing the work in general. But regardless, with something as major as this, as much money as was paid for doing this pool remodel, it's unacceptable. This is just going to kind of end up being how not to do all this stuff and what the plan resolution is for everything. Other than that, plumbing issues, I mean, that's pretty much all the plumbing entails. I might have said that backwards. That entails all that the plumbing is supposed to do, but it didn't. So, also, let me try to get around here, not fall. It's muddy. We'll go take a look at the plumbing over here and kind of go over how everything was tied into the equipment and etc. So they did all this plumbing. Originally, I had dug everything up and started working on redoing all this to try to get the equipment up off the wet ground. Everything that was here originally from the pool being built back in, let's say, 1980, I think it was just sitting on dirt, grass, wet spots over there. We ended up getting a little bit of standing water and had to replace the pump the first time. Not too big of an issue. We put a block up underneath it and kind of got it up off the ground a little bit. It seemed to do good for a long time, but given that we were having issues with some of the plumbing, it needed to be redone anyways. We decided to just go ahead and take everything out, start it up fresh out of the ground, hook it back all into new equipment, and then get it on a pad or some pavers or something just to get it up out of the low spots in the water. So what we have here is actually what the pool repair service remodel company, whatever they want to call themselves, did. So you kind of see here where all the plumbing comes in from underneath the pool. So we have the skimmer line for the skimmer basket coming in. Then we have the other line back here coming from the main drains in the bottom of the pool, and then the two in the spa. Now, then the return lines we had coming to the spa return, and then we had the pool return, which is the other one down here. Problem with this is they mislabeled these. Come to find out, they had the spa labeled pool and the pool labeled spa, and that's one of the reasons why the valve was not working correctly, and they misinformed themselves on doing the plumbing and ended up putting the Polaris pump into the wrong section of this pipe, which is why we ended up having issues with this. There was back pressure problems for this back check valve here. It busted the housing. Some of the other segments of the pipe came undone. I ended up reconnecting those, put a new filter in because the screen was torn, which seems kind of hard to do given that it's a metal mesh screen. Other than that, just basic wear and tear on the vacuum. A couple other little things like the sacrificial cushion that goes on the tail, the jet cleaner that whips around the bottom, and then of course the bag needs to be replaced. Then over here we were also having some issues with the fill line for the pool. We thought was leaking. They ended up coming back out I don't know how many times to redo that line. Come to find out, it wasn't even a line, it was the niche for the light that's in the pool, and you can't even see it because of how green it is, but all that was brand new. What they ended up doing, all new tile coping, decking around the pool, all new concrete. And they added a drain in underneath the concrete that wraps around the pool and ties into this one, which goes underneath the patio all the way out to the street. So they ended up tying into the fill line, put a back check valve. Sorry, I got mosquitoes. They put the check valve for the water fill line coming into the pool return. Now the problem is this thing would only ever put enough water to fill the line. It wouldn't actually pressurize it enough to expel water out of the pull return, given that the check valve needed to be all the way to the spa return, which was incorrect anyways because they mislabeled, if that makes sense. I might try to explain that a little bit better in another part of this series of videos, but the check valve would not prime unless the other quarter turn cutoff valve was on. And then also we had to have the backflow prevention fill line here that needed to be on, which basically just stops any dirty water from going back into the city supply. Got to have that on there. The problem is where they place this. The dirt line on all these equipment was supposed to be about right at the bottom of this T roughly, and all this is kind of sitting over here in the same orientation that it was coming out of the ground, so you can kind of see how everything is a little bit twisty, turny, tangly, which ended up being another issue too, because they ran the gas line first across here and then they ramped it uphill to the riser for the pool heater. The problem is after they ran the gas line, they proceeded to wrap all the plumbing around the gas line. So whenever I had to cut this all out, I ended up having to cut the gas line way back there as well, just to get the whole mess out all as one piece. Now this stuff doesn't even come apart because of the way it's all intertwined. The gas line was coming up I don't even remember exactly where. I think it was coming up underneath here, and then between these two, and then around here. So I mean, it was just tangled in with everything, so it had to be cut out. The other problem too is they scratched everything I did coming out of the ground because of the type of fittings that was used. They said I didn't use the right fittings. They were DFW fittings, I believe they are, which are not pressure rated. Fine, cool. I got a lot more experience in doing plumbing since then, but I just kind of grabbed what I knew. Problem is that they ended up putting a lot of the same unions back in this stuff. Also, whenever you're running pool water through plumbing, you're supposed to use this blue glue here. I mean, you can see a lot of this they didn't. I don't know what this gray, black stuff, whatever is on here. I actually had my plumber buddy look at it. He's like, he didn't even know what the heck it was. I think something down in the ground, they ended up using the yellow CPVC stuff on one of them. Another issue was actually, so you can kind of see the 1.5 inch line for the Polaris. One part of this wasn't even glued, which I think, yeah, it was this elbow here wasn't even glued. It was leaking. And then also the return for the pool, which truly is actually the return for the spa, was not glued up at this fitting either, so it was leaking. You get two separate areas, roughly 3 feet apart, were leaking underground, and actually was causing a sinkhole. The ground was never drying up. That was another reason why we were like thinking, man, what's going on with this fill line? What's the issue with this? But turns out it was just non-glued fittings. Now, coming back over here, we'll show kind of the rough layout of the equipment. So the pool pump was sitting right here. The 3 suction lines coming into the valve from 2 different directions into the pump, the motor, which they put dual timer panel, the electrical conduit all the way around to the main box on the side of the house over there. We asked them to do this just that way we didn't have to worry about anything being on the timer, not fooling with it. Just the light and the blower, just the on-off switch, so we can use those whenever we wanted. All the electrical's disconnected right now. So yeah, into the pool, the pump and the motor, out of there into the filter, then out of the filter into the gas heater, out of the gas heater into the 2 return lines. Well, the problem is that the Polaris was tied in to a return line on that check valve, or the selector valve, the Jandy valve, and then that ended up being not the right side, so the vacuum wasn't priming correctly with the pressure it needed in the line, because that operates off of water pressure, not suction. This Polaris motor wound up burning up, and we had to replace it because it overheated. That's when we discovered the whole thing with the plumbing wasn't done correctly, so that way we had to replace the motor and then just say, okay, we want to run the vacuum, we got to make sure the valve is 100% water flow to the return side that the vacuum is actually hooked into. Problem number 2 with that is that it was tied in after the heater, so anytime we ran the heater, that Polaris was getting nothing but hot water to it, which also caused the overheating issues on it around the time that it went out. We got a resolution for that. We'll go over that in a minute. Now the other problem was with the little red quarter turn valve and then the check valve, the way that was placed here, that check valve ended up being about 1.5 to 2 inches below the level of this concrete here. Now the problem with this concrete, I had, it was at about I think it's 3 foot by 8 foot slab that I had built a form for and placed and had it at the height, level, everything ready to go. For whatever reason, they told me that it wasn't going to be sufficient enough. It had to have an extra 2 feet on it. So they ripped that out, threw it away, built a new one. Okay, I have no problem with that. Now, what I don't understand is why they wouldn't have enough common sense to say, okay, this was suspended in this hole at a specific height for a certain reason. When they built the new form and just threw it in there, they didn't even chalk up the corners, any of that stuff. They just threw the form in there, poured the concrete, done with it. This slab is actually on a slant downhill towards the pool when it's supposed to slant away the other direction. And then the height of it ends up being on the low side over here, 4 inches lower than the height of the top of the slab for the house, the pool deck, and the shed, which they also poured. The deck, this slab, and this slab. Now that is kind of my second question, is why you built 2/3, or you built 3/4 of this different concrete back here. Why wouldn't you put it all to the same height? Resolution for this I came up with is basically I'm just gonna get some pavers that I bought and some border bricks. I'm gonna do a 3-inch brick border around and then just fill in the interior with these square pavers. It's gonna be like a two-tone look to it. And it's just gonna get mortared down onto that slab, so we don't have to worry about anything shifting, especially once the equipment gets placed back. So one other thing is it's gonna get a D-channel drain in the back here. And I'm gonna kind of stack the mortar and just try to finesse it where everything kind of goes a little bit downhill back towards that. And at the same time, I'm gonna try to correct it and at least get it flat, level across, and get away with that slope that goes downhill like this. Now, we were digging the trenching for everything else back here. Another problem that ended up having was the water company came in to fix a main that's on the property line here. They ended up taking, I think, 2 sections of my fence down to access it. Well, they didn't pack the dirt back down correctly or grade it the way it was supposed to be. So right at the corner of my shed here, I ended up with about, let's say about a 4-foot rough diameter sinkhole that ended up being about 2.5 feet deep that just washed out. And since they didn't grade that back down correctly to drain off into the water mains, there's sewer grates and stuff all down through this whole property line here. It ended up creating a dam where nothing this whole direction could drain out. So I ended up having water standing over here. There was already the low spot where the 2 leaks in the plumbing were causing sinkholes underground, and everything was just kind of caving down in on that. And then about to the door here, around this corner of the slab, and then roughly here, about halfway on the slab, was the only hot, like dry area. All this back here where it's still kind of wet, you can see where the whole downhill slope kind of stayed consistent through here. And I'm not gonna walk too far back here because this is mushy, but we ended up having water standing all down the side of the house over there, and I was only about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch, some spots of the water coming up over the top of the slab. It would have ended up flooding the house. So, resolution for all the in-ground stuff back here. What I'm going to end up doing is bringing all the new plumbing out of the pool coming up within 10 inches of this slab. The washout stays within the 10 inch. I'm going to put a drain underneath this gutter, tied in to continuance of the drain, running all down the length of the shed, and then going halfway into the walkway down the side of the house, and then taking that side all the way out to the street as well. But it's all that 3-inch pipe over there, and then I got a bunch on the side of the house, all the T's, the unions, elbows, all that stuff I need, even the cap grates. So one underneath the gutter here, tied in, and then I'm gonna have one here teed into it, going over to the corner of the shed here for a downspout that's going to go for the seamless gutter on the shed eventually. And then it's going to go out into the walkway over there. And then I'm going to have one roughly halfway in this walkway, 3-inch cap drain there. And then one about every 8 feet on the continuance down that line, which is where all the water was standing. Since I came in with the fill dirt and refilled all of the trenching that we had done, we're kind of okay with the water drainage right now. You can kind of see the mounds of dirt everywhere over there off in the corner. I got a pile right there. Probably going to need to bring some more fill dirt in here to do the final grading and screeding process before the grass seed and nutrient soil, all that stuff can go down. Also, the gas line, aside from being intertwined within all the plumbing here, they didn't place any of the risers or splits, anything the way we requested. We had always planned on bringing a whole home generator in, and it runs on natural gas as well. So they were supposed to put a T on it with one riser coming up here and then the other one coming up. Just the tail was supposed to stick out till we could get it placed. The shed wasn't even built at that point in time, but we told them what the plans for the future were, and they basically just wiped their butts with everything we requested. So now I got an actual plumber coming back to put the T in it here. So we have the split coming off over here for the whole home generator, which will be placed centered on the front of the shed there. And then the line will continue on down this direction and then come around the slab up against the house with another riser for the pull heater to go back in place here. Now, they put the split on it, but when they brought the riser up, they brought it up in front of the heater. They had a bunch of stuff above ground going over here around the slab and then into the pull heater, with the split coming off above ground and another quarter turn cutoff valve going into that tail that's over there on the deck. Just sticking up out of the ground over here with some duct tape on the end. Now the problem is that the cutoff valve was actually way out here into the walkway. So anytime somebody came through this little narrow path here, they'd bump it, it would turn on, we'd start smelling gas come spewing out the end over there because they didn't cap it. That's all going to get redone. They're going to actually come in. A different company is going to come in. They're going to put the T on it, run the one side for the generator, and then come over here around the slab. So anything above ground is over here outside of the walkway. Then there's also going to be a 2.5-inch electrical conduit coming around. It's going to be underneath the drain coming off, and then it's going to come off to the side of the house here. The transfer switch for the generator will go there, backfed to the generator, and then the gas line will be hooked into it. Now we've already run all the calculations on the amount of feet of the gas, the size of the meter that's there, the regulator. Took everything into account, found out that the 1-inch poly line that was put in place is sufficient for the distance it has to go max to the heater. Now the heater runs like 400,000 BTUs, and the generator is only going to run about 306,000. So the 1-inch line has been sufficient for the pool heater. So we're taking actually about 25, 30 feet roughly off of that distance for the generator. So the generator should also be sufficient running on this 1-inch line. The pool equipment will get all placed back pretty much in the same orientation. The wet pump, the motor going into the filter, and then from the filter to the heater, and then the heater to the return lines. What I'm going to do different this time is, as soon as that clean water comes out of the filter, I'm going to have a T coming off there. One side going to the pool heater, and then the other side reduced to the size of line for the cleaner, which means that it'll be nice circulated temperature of the water that's in the pool, which the vacuum's already kind of in and used to with the thermal expansion stuff. It'll be nice, clean, cool, filtered water going into the vacuum. And then everything supplied to the pool heater will come out on a separate line back into the two returns, completely away from the Polaris, to eliminate the possibility of any heat getting to that motor. Then the return lines will get labeled properly, and that way we know with the 80/20 transfer for the Jandy valve will run correctly with the spillway over the spa. New parts for the vacuum, that'll all get taken care of. But while I'm working on the plumbing for the pool and getting the equipment placed back, getting all that stuff plumbed back in, I'm actually going to be draining all the water out of the pool so I can clean it, scrub it, and then just start fresh with all new water as soon as the equipment's ready to turn on. But we've gone, this ends up being about week 6 since the pull equipment has been cut out of here. The first guy that was supposed to come and do the gas line gave us the runaround for about 3 weeks. Like I said, I already had all the trenching done back here. It was finished, completed, ready to put everything in the ground. The problem was that the gas line needed to be done first because it goes the deepest, and the way everything else is going to kind of run over that gas line needed to go in order. So the gas line, the electrical conduit, and then the drain. Waiting around on him, and then basically found out he didn't know how to do gas. He was just trying to figure it out as he went so he could get to work, I guess. We ended up getting somebody who specializes in commercial gas. They're going to come out and do it. But yeah, all the trenching, we had a real bad storm came through early one morning. This wasn't even Nicholas, the hurricane stuff that came through recently washed all of the trenching out, collapsed it. It was bad. We ended up about 4 feet deep in this little area here. I rented a mini skid steer and a plate compactor to bring in the soil and pack it all back down. You kind of see at the edge of the slab it's starting to wash out a little bit again. But with the rainwater washing all that stuff out, we ended up being about 6 inches under the slab. There was no dirt where all the framing for the shed sits on that 3.5 inch lip right there. Skid steer fell off into the trench I dug for the drain like a rut, and then it sank down. Actually, it was the body of the machine was about in this doorway, and then whenever it fell over, it knocked the bucket into that because it rotated and put a giant hole in my shed. I spent a day digging it out of that hole just to back it up 6 feet and for it to sink in again over here. Spent another day digging it out of that hole, which there's some videos on that that's going to be coming later in the series. I'm kind of jumping back and going over a lot of this stuff now in this video, but I ended up bringing in 2 truckloads of dirt and it still wasn't enough. Gonna probably end up needing about 3 more truckloads of dirt and about 2 loads of not topsoil, but the nutrient stuff, so we can put the grass seed back down once everything's completed back here. So yeah, and then all the pool plumbing is going to come up within that 10-inch border here, with a landscaping divider covering that, and then it's going to be a gravel pit all around here where the plumbing comes out of, and that's just to eliminate having to cut any notching or holes in the bricks and the pavers and all that stuff. I'm trying to avoid cutting as much concrete as possible. But the walkway is going to be the same thing, border brick all the way around, and I still haven't decided exactly where I'm going to bring it here. Originally it was going to go all the way in front of the shed, but the way that generator is just too much for pavers. So we're going to pour a pad over here for the generator after the plumbing's in the ground, and then I'm going to reconfigure the layout of the walkway, but it's basically going to get border brick all the way around, all the way down here to the edge of the shed, and it's going to come out, and it's only going to be a sidewalk the width of this. I want to keep some grass over here to soak up some of the rainwater runoff, stuff like that. And I'm only taking the pavers all the way to the edge of the shed because right now we don't have the gutters, and until we can get the gutters done, the water's just dripping, and you kind of see the trench it's creating here again. That just splashes up onto the pad. The other issue, they didn't put this pad squared or level good enough. When I built the shed, I had to do a lot of work around the inconsistencies in the concrete that they poured for that. You can kind of see when they got over to this side, it dips in, and I wound up having to kind of float a little bit of the flooring off the edge of the concrete just to keep it squared up with the rest of this wall and keep the maximum amount of floor space inside as possible at the same time. Now excuse me, the leveling with the concrete not being correct, we did the door here, and it's got a pretty fat rubber seal that goes up underneath it, but water still manages to get in there, and then with everything that's splashing into the dirt getting up there, we end up getting muddy water in the shed. So at least until I can figure out how I'm going to cut a groove or do something different with this door here, that will keep clean rainwater going in that the concrete will just soak up, and we won't have to worry about mud getting in there, caking up the tracks and all that stuff. So that's the reason I'm doing the sidewalk through here all the way to the edge, and then it's going to stop where that cap's going to be for that other downspout. So it's going to be a little bit shy of the corner of the shed, and then that drain's going to continue on down there. A bunch of stuff on the house is going to have to get reconfigured. Electrical, the meter box, the breaker panel, the network panel for the internet, all that stuff's going to have to be reconfigured over there to make room for the generator when it comes in. Well, we already got the generator, but once we get ready to actually hook it up and install it. Other than that, once all this is done over here, we're going to replant grass seed over here, and then all down the other side of the house over there after the patio. But that's kind of where we're at and why we're at where we're at. Like I said, I don't really like bashing people, but I mean, you pay somebody tens of thousands of dollars to do something like this, and as many issues as it created rather than resolved, just kind of being a pain in the butt, and it's not worth just turning the other cheek, so to speak. Like I said, I'm not going to put anybody on blast, but I am going to just kind of document this whole process to kind of show what to and not to do. For those of you that want to do DIY or whatever, just make sure you guys have kind of the info that you need to make sure that this stuff's done the right way, where you won't have the same issues that we did. But stay tuned, I got some more videos coming. You guys check me out. We'll see you in the next one.